All right, we'll do this in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of our ShawLocal.com Bears Insider Podcast. I am Hub Arkush, joined as I am, well, pretty much every week by our group sports editor, Sean Nabors, and he's here every week. The slacker.
You combined the names there. Sean Hammond.
What did
You
I
said
do?
Sean Nabors.
Did I really?
We are one now, Kyle.
Jesus Christ. Well, he did just get married. That's,
Yeah.
God, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I better take 30 seconds and wake up. Jesus Christ.
That coffee isn't hitting you yet. That's all right. We're good. Everyone at this point knows who we are, right? They've listened to the podcast and the live stream enough. We got plenty to talk about. We don't got to redo the intro. We can just dive in. We got a lot to talk about.
Well, but yeah, all right. If I'm not going to do a take two, though, I should at least get it right. So let's welcome in our group sports editor, Kyle Nabors. Welcome to the program. And I think I got tripped up there because I was getting ready to give the old married guy some crap here. He is back. He is married. He's honeymooned, and Sean Hammond back on the beat with me this week out at Hallis Hall. Sean, welcome back. I hope you're the same guy. I hope you're not a completely changed man. We're going to find out in the next half hour, 40 minutes, though, guys. Pay close attention here. And we have a little bit to talk about this week. Normally, we would go back. We would look forward. I guess it's not that different, guys. It's pretty much been all quarterbacks, all Justin Fields all the time here anyway. But this was a pretty radical week out there at Hallis Hall. And actually, I hope everybody's been reading about it all week long at ShawLocal.com. And if you have not, got to remind everybody that we've got a real special offer for you, and it's going on right now, but it does expire Friday evening. That would be Friday, October 8th at midnight. You can get your first 3 months subscription to everything that is offered by all of our Shaw publications at ShawLocal.com for just 99 cents a month. That's 3 months for 99 cents a month, but that special offer does end Friday evening, October 8th at midnight. So make sure that you get it. And then you'll be just like Sean was on his honeymoon, because I'm sure that you were doing all the right things, Sean, but you must have been following at ShawLocal.com. And what were your thoughts when you saw the news blast, the horns going off, everybody going nuts? Justin Fields now QB1 on a full-time basis for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, it was weird. I actually learned he was getting his first start on television, which is like, what? I'm not in the room. That was weird. But thank you for the welcome back. And yeah, so we're moving ahead here into the Justin Fields era. It's already sort of begun with these last two games, and I think Matt Nagy announced on what was that? Thursday, yesterday?
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning
together.
That Justin Fields is a starter moving forward. And, I think this was the only right move. I mean, I don't think there was any point in going back to Dalton at this stage. You've already got a couple starts under your belt. If you're Justin Fields, why not just you need to get him the experience. And the only way to do that is to give him some playing time. And I think this is the right move heading forward.
Kyle, I'm not even going to go there, but I am curious to what you think. I mean, we've been writing and talking about it for quite some time. I don't know that it matters at this point if it's the right move or not. It's the move, and we're not going to know what would have happened if they'd waited a little bit longer. We just now have to hope that it wasn't too soon. The way it was handled, and we wish this wasn't always the conversation around the Bears. And maybe it'll stop now that this is over. I doubt it, because it's been with a number of subjects with them. But to sit with Matt Nagy on Monday morning and have him explain why, to the surprise of some in the room, that Andy Dalton was still the starter, and then given a chance to walk it back or open the door a crack or do whatever you want, he was asked the question, just so we're clear, if Andy Dalton is healthy, he starts Sunday. The one-word answer was correct. The next thing we heard from him 49 hours later was that Justin Fields was now the QB1. And it's been that kind of messaging, in addition to the controversy of the subject, that has made this such a difficult 7-8 weeks for everybody involved.
Yeah, it's really hard to get a read, isn't it? You just don't know who's making the decisions up there with the way things are going, because the messaging isn't clear. And it's been a problem for the Bears for multiple years in terms of getting on the same page of what message they want to sell to their fan base.
Yeah, and it's interesting, guys. And Kyle, I didn't mean to. I mean, I am interested. Sean and Kyle, I didn't mean to cut you guys off and say, hey, let's not talk about whether it's right or not. I think that's fine. It's just that I struggle with that really being the issue because I do not think that this is a binary choice, right or wrong. It's a binary choice between Dalton and Fields. But I mean, rarely is there a right or wrong in this. But what I do think we can have a strong opinion on, which is where I've been focused the whole time, is which quarterback gives you a better chance to win based on where they are at and how they're playing right now. And we've heard really for 9 months now, 10 months, that this team is trying to thread a needle of developing their new franchise quarterback and be a playoff team at the same time. Those two things rarely work hand in hand. And the assumption has been from the jump that that's why Andy Dalton was the number one quarterback from day one. Because if you weren't worried about giving yourself the best chance to win, then obviously you would have started Fields on day one. And so, Sean, I'll come back to you. I mean, the question that I've had, and I think the question that a lot of people are asking is why Wednesday? What happened in the last week, even if you look back to Fields' performance on Sunday, but then more specifically for it to be adamantly not him on Monday, but him on Wednesday. Why does Justin Fields suddenly give the Bears a better chance to win than Andy Dalton? What have we seen on the football field that suggests that's true?
Yeah, the delivery was weird this week, and I think it's probably either one of two things. Either somebody got in Matt Nagy's ear and they had these conversations and he realized that this was the right move to make, or on Monday maybe he was just so used to that stock answer of Andy Dalton's our starter moving forward. Maybe he just used that again, not realizing that times have changed here in the last couple of weeks. And I think you look at the results that we've seen. They've played two likely playoff teams in the Rams and the Browns, and they haven't won one of those games with Andy Dalton and one with Justin Fields, and they haven't found success against either. They didn't find success against either of those teams. They couldn't beat the Rams with Andy Dalton. I don't know that they would have beat the Browns with Andy Dalton. And maybe at this point, you got to realize where you are as a team. And I don't necessarily think this team is going to be going to the Super Bowl anytime soon. Now, they're not going to say that. They're not going to publicly admit that this season is about Justin Fields' development, but that's what it became the minute they drafted him.
Sean, did you give into your worst instinct and go back and watch that Cleveland tape?
I actually haven't yet, and I wanted to. I do want to. I've had so many people tell me don't watch it that I don't know what to do.
Well, first of all, Sean, the one place where I do got to step in and take a stand here. Matt Nagy knew exactly what he was saying on Monday when he said it was Justin Fields, and when he said it was Andy Dalton, he knew exactly what he was saying on Wednesday. It wasn't just kind of I can't deal with this anymore, I'm going to get it over with. But you did say something else very interesting. I think you said maybe somebody got in his ear. And that's what's intrigued me the most about all this as we look at the organizational decisions and what's going on here, because this season is not just a referendum on who the quarterback is going to be. It's very much a referendum on who the general manager and the head coach are going to be. What do Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy have to do to keep their jobs? And that's been a bit of a mystery. So much of a mystery, Kyle, that the organization won't even tell us when their contracts expire. We don't know for sure if it's the end of this year or next year. And it makes it very difficult to evaluate all this stuff. But we know what the discontent had been coming into the season with the GM head coach duo amongst the fan base, amongst a lot of media analysts, which is unfortunate since they had actually been fairly successful by NFL standards. But that's the bed they made for themselves with the way they handle a lot of these things. And now here we go again, just never knowing for sure what the focus is. And that's why I keep coming back to the tape and the field and Justin Fields. And I had a column on this where I actually laid out the specifics, charted it a little bit in terms of what the numbers were at the beginning of the week. It's still archived at shawlocal.com if you guys want to go take a look. Had 5 really special plays on Sunday. He made 5 plays where you look at it and you say, wow, this guy could be a franchise quarterback. Then there were 52 other plays in the game. And of course, the Yahoos on talk radio wanted to suggest that I was saying he had 52 bad plays. I'm pretty sure that's not what I wrote. That's not what I meant. The offense stalled on the other 52 plays. The offense was terrible on the other 52 plays, and he did have some bad ones mixed in there. A rather startling statistic is that in the time that Andy Dalton has been on the field as the Bears starting quarterback, the Bears are 9 of 16 on third down. In the time that Justin Fields has been on the field as the Bears starting quarterback, they are 4 of 29. It's pretty clear that the offense has run better under Andy Dalton. Unfortunately, Dalton got hurt. It's a small sample size. But then you add that he's coming off the best 18 minutes of football the Bears offense has played prior to the moment of that injury and doesn't get a chance to go back on the field. These are all the things that you throw out there. And again, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's right to develop a player to put him on the football field. We know that. But it feels like the cheese is being moved, if you will, like the rules change somehow. And that's the part that I've been struggling to get my arms around this week.
Well, I mean, I think the place to start is we don't know if the Bears or if Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are doing the move now because they think Justin Fields gives them the best chance to win this season, which we have assumed was the goal all along, for them to save their job, that they needed to get to the playoffs and probably win a game or two. Kind of was what a lot of people thought the expectations were. Or if they've come to the realization that it doesn't really matter if it's Andy Dalton or Justin Fields leading this team, that they're kind of in the middle of the pack and not going to be a great team anyway. And maybe they've come to the realization the best chance to save their job is for Justin Fields to develop.
Well, Kyle, you could be absolutely right. And they could be right. And so this could all make sense. But again, I just tend to look down the road a little bit, Sean. And no, I'm not going to go back and watch the Cleveland tape for a seventh time because it was painful. I'm also not going to ever go back and watch that season-ending press conference that George McCaskey and Ted Phillips and Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy had. I want to say it was January 13th, but whatever the day it was, because that was actually as ugly as the Cleveland Browns tape. And so, what are they setting themselves up for now if, regardless of how well Fields plays, they finish 6-11, and then they want to keep Pace and Nagy? It's almost like this organization moves from one crisis to the next and creates them. And so that's why I just think the handling of this has been so important. The messaging has been important, and the messaging was good. It was consistent. People didn't like it, but they clearly had a plan and they were sticking to it. And then you walk in one day and it's like the sun didn't come up. It's like we're in an alternate universe now, and now there's a new set of rules. So that's the piece that I try and get my arm around.
I think they could make whatever argument they want to make for keeping Pace and Nagy, no matter how the season plays out, because we basically saw them do that last year. They could have. There would have been a very strong argument to make changes last year, and they didn't do that, and a lot of folks were upset about that. And if they want to keep these guys, they're going to keep them. If they're got to point to Justin Fields' development, if they want to point to the win total, whatever it may be, they're gonna keep these guys if that's what they want. And it seems like they have good relationships with them and want to keep them. I'm not saying that's the right move either, but I don't necessarily think the results, wins or losses per se, is going to determine that.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that. I don't know how we juggle all these balls and keep them all up in the air.
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because now you turn around again. I mean, guys, we've all known that at some point this year, Justin Fields was going to be, needed to be, should be the Bears starting quarterback. The question was, at what point had you made it clear to everybody that you know what you're doing and that there's a good reason for it? And so what I come to, Kyle, is that I think apparently one of the reasons they had to do it this week is because Andy Dalton's healthy and ready to play now. And so what would have been the harm in letting Dalton start one more time after the injury because of how well he played in those 18 minutes leading up to the injury, seeing what that did for the offense? And then, you could have a perfect bridge to the Justin Fields if it wasn't any different. But if it was different and he was playing well, it's not like they were hindering his development by using the Fields package and putting him on the field occasionally.
I get what you're saying. I just don't think that they have the stomach to do that. If they go out and perform badly with Andy Dalton, the amount of second guessing that would come into play, I think, would be immediate. It would be fierce. I think you're setting yourself up for just a firestorm of controversy at that point if you go back to Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, but I think the controversy would have been short-lived because the answer is simple. He was
Well, I
our
mean,
starter. We
you
promised
already,
him he was bad, so we pulled him. Now we're
yeah,
making a change.
yeah, but I mean, you've already, I mean, people already don't have a lot of faith in you, right? Like, if you then pull the rookie QB to go back to the perceived your guy, and it goes awry, it would get nasty really quick.
Well, again, I think we're talking about the public discourse. I don't know what we're talking about around Hallis Hall, because now you get to the flip side of it, guys. And by the way, I enjoy this because I want to make sure we cover all the bases and we're talking about all the possibilities. I'm not unhappy that Justin Fields is starting. I think it's going to be fascinating. Now we'll see what happens. In a few weeks, we hope that a lot of this will be forgotten noise. But the last piece of it that everybody just kind of blows off, but I can't because I've been around NFL teams for 45 years, is I can assure you that everybody in that locker room is going to toe the party line. And as long as, Dalton is starting, even if they think Fields is the better football player, they're not going to come out and complain about it or say it publicly. And they're not going to talk about it that much around the facility either. And it's not really going to hold anybody back. The flip side of it is if you've got a bunch of veterans there who are saying, wait a minute, this coach is a liar. We can't trust him. We heard what he said about our buddy Andy for all this time. And it was Nagy himself who kept telling us how Andy was the clear leader of the team and what a great job he was doing. There's no getting around one thing here, guys. Andy Dalton got screwed, and not so much he was promised the starting job and he should keep it. I mean, I think that's silly because we all know, everybody gets the starting job when they're the starter. And then when they're not good enough and they lose it, they're not the starter anymore. The problem is that he didn't get the chance to lose it. The head coach kept telling all of his guys that Andy is your guy week in, week out, even after Fields' last start. And then when nobody took the field over a 48-hour period, he suddenly wasn't. Now, if Justin Fields comes out and plays lights out, guys, and shows, 10, 15 of the kind of plays that those 5 were last week, it's all going to start to move forward pretty quickly. But if there are any bumps in the road early, God forbid they lose a game that they could have won with better quarterback play, now you've run the risk of creating a rift in your locker room that you didn't have to create just by giving the guy, the chance that you promised him when he was healthy to at least, relinquish the job on his own.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the way that this has played out for Dalton. You could kind of see the pain in Matt Nagy's face as he was describing that conversation with Dalton earlier this week. And yeah, he's a good guy. Everybody seems to like him in the locker room. And it just kind of sucks the way that happened, and the injury too. I mean, he didn't really even take a hit. It was an unfortunate situation, but I think it's just time, they got to move forward. I don't know. You're right, Hub. It's hard to get a good sense of what the locker room thinks, and they're going to say the right things in front of the media. But I would think there's probably just as many people excited about this opportunity with Justin as there are, who are feeling for Andy.
Well, to me, I mean, we talk about their messaging. It sounds like their messaging to the public has been kind of the same to Andy, which is you're the starter, right? Which was absurd to me because, listen, they signed Andy Dalton in free agency well before the draft. They had no idea Justin Fields was going to fall to a position where they could actually be able to trade up and get him. We figured Justin Fields could be the second QB off the board. We figured at the worst he's going to be 7th or 8th overall. We didn't think that, he was going to fall to 11 where the Bears could get him. At that point, the messaging to Andy needed to be, listen, you're going to start week 1. We'll give you week 1. We don't know when Justin's going to be ready, but when we feel it's time to make that move, we're going to make that move. But by continuing to play the game of Andy is our starter, it set yourself up to put yourself in that situation. And for some reason, Matt, all the way through Monday, refused to acknowledge the reality that they were living in.
Well, and let me, Kyle, just go back to something Sean just said, because it gets to the heart of kind of where I started with this, and it's the purpose of the conversation. This isn't about, guys, whether or not Justin Fields is a good quarterback. This isn't about whether Andy Dalton is a bad quarterback. This is about a mess that the Bears made 10 months ago that they miraculously rebounded from about 7 or 8 months ago. Because coming out of that season-ending presser, we didn't know. We thought maybe no Bear fan would ever talk about the team again. It was that embarrassing and ugly. And yet, as soon as they draft Justin Fields, it's all forgotten and everybody's excited and thrilled. And then the next thing becomes everybody's mad at him because he's not playing soon enough. And so now they've tried to clean up that mess. But Sean mentioned the pain on Matt Nagy's face as he talked about his conversation with Andy Dalton. I just would like to be comfortable with how real that pain was, because if that pain was that real, he could have given Dalton one more chance to go out on his own terms. Is it Matt Nagy's decision, or did somebody else get involved? Somebody else can be read as George McCaskey, Ted Phillips, or both, or Ryan Pace for that matter. We hear about the great collaboration. And you know what? None of it matters in terms of whether they beat the Raiders Sunday or not. But it is certainly critical in terms of gaining some confidence in the way that this football organization is being run.
Yeah, the whole situation has not instilled much confidence. You're right about that, Hub. And, we'll probably never know what conversations took place between Monday and Wednesday, or if we do, it'll certainly be years down the line. But it's worth wondering about, because it goes back to just how this organization operates.
I'm going to dive into a question here, kind of as a transition, but I think it's a good one. And it really applies to Nick Foles, too, as we talked about during the offseason here.
Well, we've got Bob O'Neill checking in. Bob, thank you. Wants to know any chance they can trade Dalton. Guys, I had a conversation with some folks I was hosting at 670 The Score the other night, and it was a great show. We got a lot of calls, a lot of energized fans. And it was interesting because, as I expected, clearly the majority of the fan base, this is what they wanted, but it's not as one-sided as I thought it was going to be. I mean, there are people out there who still, want to have this season stay alive, think that maybe Dalton gives them a better chance for that. And so Bob is wondering, any chance now that they can trade Dalton? I meant to check. The trade deadline got moved back a couple of years ago. It's right about mid-season right now, so probably still about 4 or 5 weeks away. I'll get the exact date. It's not hard to find if you can't wait for me to get it for you in our next podcast.
Google tells me November 2nd.
Okay, November 2nd, which is right about, it's what I expected. I was going to say, because the 49ers game is Halloween Day, October 31st. So it's the Tuesday after the 49ers game. And I cannot imagine them not trading one or the other, Andy Dalton or Nick Foles, before the trade deadline. I mean, at this point, whatever the cap pain is, it is. They're vested veterans. Their contracts are guaranteed for the year. Dalton was always a one-year hit anyway. Foles had a big cap hit last year, not as big a cap hit as people thought this year, but still a significant hit. Part of it's already gone because they've been on your roster for half the season. But Bob, I will be stunned if they keep both veterans past the trade deadline. I don't know why you would. I think the thinking all along, part of it was salary cap related. It was just they had a bad contract with Foles last year. It wasn't as bad this year, but still bad for a backup quarterback. So, and I think going in with no clue as to when Fields was going to be ready, whether you think he is now or not. They certainly didn't know before they ever got to training camp or got to the opening day, roster decisions. The feeling was, if they were trying to compete, if they were trying to be a playoff team, win as many games as they could, which we thought at the time is what, Nagy and Pace had to do to keep their jobs. And Dalton got hurt week 1, week 2, that they had Foles ready to step in and start games while Fields wasn't. That's all clearly changed now. If Fields were to get hurt or just not be ready, apparently you go back to Dalton. I don't know what Nick Foles did to become kind of the silent, the third stooge here, who never even gets to talk. But there's no reason to have these two veterans here. So Bob, my answer to you is, I think they trade one or the other, and then it becomes a question of which one has more value, if any value, to other NFL teams out there. What we've seen so far, no season-ending quarterback issues. I think the Dolphins were prepared for Tua to go down, with Brett Hundley. You look at Drew Lock is supposed to be the young developmental guy behind Teddy Bridgewater, and it appears that Bridgewater will be back this week anyway. So you look around, Carson Wentz hasn't missed a start. There have been no quarterback changes yet. That's a little unusual, as a matter of fact, to be honest with you, now that we're going into week 5, that we don't have that first serious quarterback situation. But history tells us that sometime in the next 5 weeks, somebody is still going, or 4 weeks, I guess, somebody is going to need a quarterback. And I'm not sure who else is going to be on the block out there. Now, something else could happen this week. We don't know yet who is starting for the 49ers in a big game Sunday in Arizona, but there's the possibility that Trey Lance could get his first start. If that were to happen and he were to play well, Jimmy Garoppolo would be more attractive to a team looking, if a team was looking for both an immediate and a long range answer. But if there is a team out there that is looking for an immediate answer, not necessarily long range, and thinks that they can contend for something this year, then there's going to be a market in the next couple of weeks at some point for either Dalton or Foles. And guys, I'd be taken aback if they didn't deal one of them.
I think that, the Bears certainly want to trade one of them. The question is going to be, as Hub said, is a team going to step up, a QB needy team, step up to take on, either Dalton or Foles. I have a feeling it's going to be Foles. If they had their choice. I guess it depends on what team it comes to call and which quarterback they want, right? But
and what they're offering.
Yeah, I think it's clear from, as Hub said, the forgotten man, the guy we never heard from. If they're going to unload one, the Bears' preference would probably be to get rid of Nick Foles. Seems to have really had a falling out with the organization.
Let's get another Nick Foles press conference. That was fun. Let's get him up there saying, "Get me out of here."
Guys, the one thing I wonder about, though, is that, I don't even know at this point. I can't imagine they had a falling out with Nick Foles, because Foles has walked away from the game a couple times in his career. Yeah. And if he was unhappy, I don't think he'd be here. I think he's probably fairly happy collecting his, $7 or $6 million this year.
Paycheck.
I don't think that's the issue. As a matter of fact, if one of them is going to be unhappy, I think it's got to be Dalton, to be honest with you, But I don't think that really is the issue. It's which one has trade value. It's which one does another team come calling for. And this is where I come back to, listen, the Rams game was a disappointment, but it also went exactly the way everybody knew and thought it was going to be. And Andy Dalton wasn't the problem in that game. He then came back and played an excellent quarter and 3 minutes of football. He looked good doing that against what we're now finding out may be a decent football team. That's also, boy, there are so many ways you can spin the curiosity and the controversy around the Bears. I want to save that thought for a minute about what the Bears 2-2 record really means and what the Bengals loss really means. But, the week 2, fixing the mistakes, doing the right things, he had that offense flying. The numbers were stunning. He got hurt and he never got a chance to play again. So I think that's more indicative of what's going to create trade value. Some teams are going to look at that and say, well, obviously this guy can still run an NFL off. He is what we thought he was. He is a really solid game manager. And you don't know that with Nick Foles, because the last time you saw him, he was playing poorly, terribly, but there were a lot of circumstances around it. So you're kind of back to where we were when they went out and signed Dalton in the first place. And I was asking the question, what makes Andy Dalton better than Nick Foles? We don't know if he is or not, but at least we have that one sample size from him that hopefully created some trade value.
So I think if we start, I kind of want to look ahead here and talk about the offensive line, because we got several questions in here. And, we spent so much time on Justin Fields, and that's obviously the biggest storyline. But for the immediate future of this team and trying to figure out if they can compete and win on a weekly basis, obviously there was huge news in that game last Sunday with David Montgomery going down. Justin Fields didn't have to do a lot of that heavy lifting against the Detroit Lions. That's going to change depending on opponent, but it's also going to change because David Montgomery is gone for the next several weeks. And I think the emphasis is going to come onto the offensive line a lot more here. And we have several questions. And I think we'll start with, we got questions about Tevin Jenkins, Larry Bourne. But before we get to those guys, because I understand why people have questions about them, if I can find the question about Jason Peters. Let's start with Jason.
Joseph Lapointe is checking in with us this morning, wants to know, how did Peters show up on tape? Looked like he played physical in the run game. Joe, Peters is gotten better. Nobody was good in Cleveland. There's no question about that. And nobody was perfect against Detroit. But Peters did play well against the Bengals, coming back when we didn't even know if he'd be able to, when we thought he had a quad injury. And he looked good. I mean, well, I don't even want to go too far one way or the other. He was better than average. Let me put it that way against the Lions, as he plays his way into football shape and gets to know the Bears system. So do the Bears have a Hall of Fame? Well, they do have one, but I mean, is he playing at a Hall of Fame level at left tackle? Absolutely not. And part of that is that you can't expect him to, since he was fishing, 6 weeks ago and had no off season, and we don't even know what kind of conditioning he was doing. And he is working his way into playing shape, but it's also still, at times you look at the tape and you go, wow, that guy looks like he's almost 40 years old. And then you say, wait a minute, he is almost 40 years old, So he is not the biggest problem on the line. Let me answer your question that way. Okay. Germain Ifedi has really struggled. He had the worst game of anybody in Cleveland, although James Daniels was a disappointing second in that category, because he's a kid who I really believe has got a Pro Bowl in his future at some point. And that's where the bigger issue is. The other thing that was different in Detroit is they gave him so much help. They played so much 2 and 3 tight end that's part of what fixed the issue too. Now, that can be part of the game plan going forward. And if that works for you, that's fine. The problem is it takes away some of what you can do in the passing game. It takes away a lot of what you can do with your RPOs. And so now you're playing with this offense that you're so determined to install and get right. Is the Bears' offensive line going to improve to the point where we don't look at it as a liability for the offense this year? I just don't know about these tackles. That's the issue. And I can tell you, we know no more today than we did 4 weeks ago about Tevin Jenkins or Larry Borum. Tevin Jenkins is on a predictable schedule. I don't know the exact procedure that he had, but having had a couple of back surgeries that sound very similar to what he needed, I can tell you that you're talking 10 to 12 weeks before you'd put him on a football field, which gets him back right around the trade deadline, right around midseason, maybe a little bit later. That's why they didn't want to put him. Well, they got the 3-week IR rule this year, so he is on IR. It wasn't a decision that they had to make. I know what it was. Going in, if you were on IR prior to the roster cut down, you were done for the year. Once the season started, you could go to IR for 3 weeks, and that's why they wanted to keep him available for this season. He will play at some point this season. It depends on how he rehabs and how much you want to risk your rookies back. Larry Borum's tougher because that's a high ankle sprain. He went on IR. He'll be eligible to come off. I think it's after the Raiders game, but don't have any idea if he is physically ready to do that or not.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything, Sean, about Tevin Jenkins, which is interesting. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised and say interesting, but I definitely don't get the feeling that we're close to him being back on a football field practicing at this point.
No, we haven't heard anything, and yeah, the question you threw up there, Kyle, the second one, does the O-line become a strength with Jenkins and Borum return? I mean, yeah, but we don't know when that's going to be. That's going to be down the line. And plus, we're still talking about 2 rookies who don't have much NFL experience. Jenkins hasn't played a game, and Borum played a quarter or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of the same situation as Justin Fields. I feel better about the upside of the team with Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borum out there, but they're still rookies, and they're going to make rookie mistakes. So I don't know ceiling-wise in the short term if they're going to make you particularly better than Jason Peters and Germain Ifedi. Long term, yes, obviously, but I don't think you should be counting on those guys stepping in and immediately becoming these studs where your offense is a world beater.
Guys, the one thing I can tell you, you're not going to hear anything about Tevin Jenkins on the field for a little while. My last surgery was a year ago next week, actually. And from what I understand, it was actually more extensive than his because it was more discs worked on, but I know where they were working and have an idea of what they were doing. And I've gone through the rehab, not to play football, just to live and walk. And I can tell you that 6-7 weeks removed from that surgery, you wouldn't think about letting him go out on a football field yet. He's probably just about advanced to the riding the bike stage. They're doing a lot of core work around where that surgery was, but it's going to be at least 2-3 more weeks before they even think about letting him do any of the kind of serious lifting that it would take to get ready to play football. And even that's not going to be the kind of weightlifting that he would normally do for training. So, your best hope You tend to memorize the schedule after a while. I forget who they play after the 49ers, but somewhere, week 10, week 11 is, I would think, the earliest you'd even see him on the practice field. And I can't imagine you'd see him in a game before week 12, week 13, something like that.
When is the Bears bye? Isn't it right around that 49ers game?
It's a week or two after. Yeah, I think it's late. I want to say it was week 10, but again, I'm just doing that from memory.
They got the Steelers on Monday, November 8th, and then I believe the bye is the next week, and they don't play till the 21st again.
To me, that seems like a realistic date for seeing Tevin Jenkins coming out of that bye.
You might see him in practice for the first time during that bye week, and even that would be going slow. So, again, week 13 might be a reasonable target to actually, if they were pushing him that soon, to see him out on the football field. You're going to see Larry Borum sooner than that. I just don't know how much sooner. And now that Borum, he hurt that ankle having become a left tackle. When he's healthy, he's not going to take time away from Jason Peters as long as Jason Peters continues to be stable or improve, because now you've got the issue of, it's not just developing a left tackle, but you're protecting the blind side of the franchise, and so you may get him a rep or two, but listen, he was a right tackle prior to all the issues. Maybe you start to use him to push Jermaine Ifedi, because, as I said, Ifedi has been the weak link to this point.
Yeah, definitely. Borum, I would think we'd see him come back on the right side. Bob O'Neill, who asked the question earlier about, I can't remember what he asked about now, but he also asked about Tariq Cohen now. Is he done with the Bears? I don't think he's done with the Bears. He's under contract, but I think it's safe to assume the rehab is going slower than anyone would like, right?
Yes and no. I can't imagine he's done with the Bears. I don't know why he would be, unless his knee's trashed and his career is over, and that doesn't happen with ACLs these days in the NFL. But I think we walked through this timeline last week in the podcast. The ACL has become a 9 to 12 month injury, and many will tell you it's usually 18 months before you're completely 100% healed. But these guys start to think about playing at 9 to 12 months, and some of the special ones are close to 100% by 11, 12, 13 months. His injury was week 3 in Atlanta last year, so literally just 12 months and a week ago. They had to wait about 2-3 weeks, as they always do, to let the swelling go down to do the surgery. So he's not even at that 12-month period yet. And because he started on the PUP list, he's not eligible to come back for 2 more weeks. He would not be eligible until after, again, I've been so focused on everything going on this week, I forget who they have next week after the Raiders. But after that 6th game, he becomes eligible, and then we'll have a better sense. Sean, we see him out on the practice field during practice, not practicing, but out with his teammates, and you can see that he's moving much better, doing normal things, sometimes breaking into a little bit of a trot or skipping around or celebrating or having fun with his teammates. He appeared to be still struggling, limping a little bit as recently as 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. He's moving fluidly and cleanly now, but not doing football things. So, he looks a little better, but there's no way to gauge. And I'm sure the Bears aren't even going to talk about it until he becomes eligible. And then we'll start to get a sense of when he might be back. And depending, now the Bears, interestingly, at least as of the moment, have not put David Montgomery on IR, which would mean a minimum 3-week sit down. These unverified reports were that it is a 4 or 5 week injury. So apparently, from the Bears' perspective, we're looking at 3 to 5 weeks in the hope that maybe he'd only miss 2 games. But I would think that depending on what Damian Williams does, whether he can stay healthy, and how soon they expect to get David Montgomery back, would also have some impact on how quickly they'd be willing to rush, if they were rushing him, to rush Tariq Cohen back.
Yeah, I find that very curious that they haven't put him on there yet, which that could mean that they're optimistic, or maybe he goes on this weekend. I don't really know. What the move's going to be there. I wanted to ask you, Hub, because some folks were talking about this on my social media feed. Do you think the Jakeem Grant trade signals anything regarding the Bears' thoughts on Tariq Cohen moving forward?
No, I think what it signals is that Simba Webster wasn't playing very well.
Yeah,
and it's kind of a rare opportunity to get a guy who's coming off a season where he was the 2nd team All-Pro returner. for a 6th-round pick. And Grant said something very interesting yesterday, yesterday, we're recording on Friday. We got to visit with him on Thursday, that he's more excited about the impact he thinks he can make at wide receiver than returning kicks, and we tend to forget. He is a wide receiver.
I know that. I always love specialists who want to, make sure that they remind everyone that they're a wide receiver.
I share your smile and your thoughts, but when you look at the numbers, he has caught passes. I mean, he's been
all right,
and he is the exact. This is where I keep getting confused. He's the exact same player in some respects as Marquise Goodwin and Damiere Byrd. He's another 4.3 guy, and they have this unbelievable speed. They have not been able to leverage the speed of Goodwin or Byrd yet. They haven't even tried with Byrd, and so maybe Grant's the guy, But that's not why they got him. They clearly got him because they've had nothing in the punt return game. It was an opportunity. I wouldn't read too much into the move for anything other than improving their special teams and their punt return game.
Maybe, definitely don't read anything into it into Tariq Cohen. You can maybe read a little bit into the fact that they're going to need Khalil Herbert more on offense, and Jakeem Grant can fill in there on special team with Herbert vacating any kind of role there. That's kind of interesting that you bring up the wide receiver point, because I did want to talk about that today. You and I, all three of us, were intrigued by the Bears offseason bringing in Marquise Goodwin, a guy that I really liked that opted out last year, and has had trouble staying healthy. But I really like some of the stuff he did with the 49ers. I was intrigued by Damiere Byrd, kind of the same type of player. Goodwin has been on the field, has really failed to carve out a role for himself, and Damiere Byrd has been pretty much absent, which surprises me. Are you guys concerned about the Bears, at least so far, a lack of depth at wide receiver or playmakers behind Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney? And actually, that we'll get into, I guess, answer that, because someone asked about the lack of targets to Allen Robinson, and we gotta, I guess, is that a symptom of the fact that they're not getting a lot of other guys that can take the pressure off of Allen Robinson and the defensive eyes off of Allen Robinson?
I'll tell you one part that's interesting is that Damiere Byrd actually has the 3rd most snaps of any wide receiver on the team.
Does he really?
He's out there, and you just don't see him. Yeah, that's the intriguing part about it. He definitely had. I got to go back and check all 4 weeks, but I know he had more snaps than Goodwin did on Sunday.
I got it up in front of me here. He does for the season. He is 3rd.
Yeah.
He was a little bit lower this past week, but for the most part, he's been over half their snaps per game.
Yeah, he's out there. He's just, I think what it is, Kyle, to be honest with you, he's just not really a very good wide receiver,
Which is why the Patriots starved the wide receiver starved Patriots had no problem letting him go, I guess, right?
Yeah, and that was after he was their either leading or second leading pass catcher last year. But even that is the number 1 target. I think he had 40-some catches. Marquise Goodwin had that brilliant 2017, I think it was 17. He had that one brilliant season with the 49ers, where he had 980 yards on just 40-some catches. I mean, he averaged over 19 yards a catch over the season. He can be what they want him to be. Darnell Mooney can be that guy. I mean, when you lose a tenth of a second from 4.2 to 4.3, we forget that the reason Mooney was drafted, we thought, was strictly for his speed. Nobody knew he was going to prove to be the pass catcher that he has. They're looking for one more guy like that. And since I think that you just answered our question, is Byrd has not proven to be what they hoped he would. I don't think you give up on Goodwin yet, but now Grant becomes another guy to fill that spot. But guys, this is where it gets even more interesting and more confusing than that is, the offense just hasn't worked, and it hasn't been just because of the quarterbacks. I mean, the tight ends don't even exist in this offense unless they go 3 tight end to help block the run. Of 100 pass attempts this year, there have been 15 targets to the 3 tight ends combined, who we thought were going to be a huge part of the story this year. You bring back Jimmy Graham, and while a lot of people were upset about the $7 to $9 million cap hit, and why would you do that? I thought it was clear why you would do that. He was 3rd in the NFL in touchdowns amongst tight ends with 8 last year. He was one of the best red zone targets in the league. It's important, and he's also a tremendous leader and mentor to the other guys in the locker room. But I wouldn't pay him $7 million to throw the ball to him 3 times in 4 games. He's got 3 targets in 4 games, and not even in the red zone. Cole Kmet had a really good training camp, and I thought, wow, this kid is coming. And now some of that may be his own struggles. I mean, he's had some mental errors early. He hasn't been able to make the plays yet that we know he can make. And then Jesse James was one of the stories of training camp. He's literally disappeared. Literally, he had to take a couple days off for personal reasons this week, and I don't make light of that. Guys have personal reasons; they have lives, and I hope everything is okay. But my point is, in 4 games, J.P. Holtz became the story last week because he is the best run blocker of the 4, and he was the guy that was in there clearing the way last week in a lot of that 2-3 tight end stuff. So this offense, not only is it not producing the way that everyone, mainly the Bears, but the rest of us hoped it would, it's not being used the way we expected it to be used. They're not getting players on the field. And how much of that is the weakness of the offensive line? How much of that may be on Justin Fields not being ready, as he's been the quarterback? I mean, he's got a lot more time under center than Andy Dalton does at this point. And again, guys, I'm not criticizing the kid. Rookies playing quarterback look just like Justin Fields has looked. There's nothing to suggest that he's not everything that I think he's going to be, and I think he's going to be really good. And I know a lot of people even get crazier than that about who he can be. But that's part of the issue too. And so I keep waiting for this breakout game, where the offense is going to start to work the way it should, and everybody's going to be contributing in the way they should. And you know what? It could be against the Raiders Sunday because the Raiders defense isn't very good, and the Bears match up well in terms of what they want to do and what the Raiders struggle with. Now, the Bears haven't done it yet. Obviously, you're tremendously concerned that they have to do it without David Montgomery. But, listen, we raved about the Damian Williams signing as a number 2. Where would they be if this happened last year? And you didn't know if it was going to be Cordero Patterson or Tariq Cohen, who can't be a starting running back.
Sorry to interrupt, but can you just take your victory lap on Cordero Patterson quickly, because he is dominating in Atlanta?
Thank you, Kyle. I don't do that because
it's all right. Just get the streamers out and go ahead.
No, one thing I've learned, I know we all have fun with how old I am and how long I've been doing this, but one thing I've learned, the veteran experience, is that when you take victory laps, you also got to take punches in the mouth for every time you were wrong, and so, no, I'm not going to crow about it. And by the way, it's a small sample size. We'll see. I will tell you this. I was annoyed when I asked Ryan Pace in one of his rare appearances, why let CP get away? And he said it was a luxury we couldn't afford. No, it wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity you needed to hang on to, and you didn't. But that's a different story for a different time. So, guys, I think that I'm excited about something. I think Khalil Herbert may be a pretty good football player. People forget where Jordan Howard came from, and that it was week 5 when he suddenly appeared 6 years ago or whatever it was, and with running backs, it doesn't matter if you're a 5th round pick, a 7th round pick. I don't know. It's a feeling I've got that this kid can play. And if they don't stay with the run, they're not going to run 39 times and throw it 17 times without David Montgomery. That no longer makes sense. But they are going to do everything they can to stay with that 50-50 balance. They may be okay with, Williams and Herbert filling that spot until Montgomery comes back. And if they're just okay there is a chance that the rest of this offense can start to do what it needs to do this Sunday because they've got the right opponent for it.
And we talked about it the week that they signed Damian Williams, Hub, to piggyback off one of the things you were saying there. He's a much better backup. He's a much better number 2 running back than they've had in recent years. And you brought him in for moments like this. And, I think they're going to be in a lot better shape now than they would have if this happened a year ago because of him and because of Herbert too. You want to see what he has. And I think this will be a good test for him, a good opportunity. He's going to get his snaps and his touches. And, you're really going to find out what he has in that running back position. We've seen him on kick return a little bit, but this will be his first extensive time at running back.
Yeah, and the thing that gives me the most optimism going into this weekend's game, and really overall the outlook for the season, is the change at the change in play caller with Bill Lazor taking back over too. I think the Bears offense looked good near the end of the season with Bill calling the plays last year, and they have more athlete overall talent. They're more athletic than they were last year. I think with Lazor calling the plays, they're going to be in better shape. And as Hub said, was talking about with the lack of the usage of the tight ends, I fully expect that to change with Bill Lazor calling plays moving forward.
I would think you're right. I would hope you're right, Kyle. And we will, begin to find out this weekend. We unfortunately have run out of time here, as I've kind of bumbled about this morning, and I apologize for that. Rough start, and it took a long time to recover. Not sure if I did recover, to be honest with you. But what can you see, Kyle? Charlie Blanchard's question up there. It came in about 10:14, and
oh, yep.
Yeah, let's leave on this because it's consistent with everything else that we're talking about. Charlie had joined us and said, "What's going on with A-Rob? He's not even getting targets outside a couple splash plays," and this is symptomatic of everything that we've been talking about, guys, and probably the place to wrap it up and maybe just a 2-minute preview of Sunday. Really, nobody. I mean, who on this team, other than I think you'd say Roquan Smith, Robert Quinn, and Khalil Mack? Who else on this team, forget playing up to their ability and up to our expectations, who has been able to perform the way you would just expect them to? Who's been used the way you would expect them to? And that's the puzzle with A-Rob. When did Darnell Mooney become the primary receiver on this team? That's something that I just don't understand.
Yeah, I think it's a symptom of these issues offensively as a whole. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily any problem with A-Rob. He's still, he's making great catches. That catch along the sideline was incredible last week. It's just something has been off with this offense.
Yeah, I think you guys are completely right. And I just until we see them this weekend in Las Vegas, it's hard to know how quickly it's going to improve. Hub, you're on mute.
Having a really good day here. Guys, I think we're at that point where we have to make our picks and say goodbye. And I'm going to go last here just because I feel like it. So, Sean, why don't you start us off? What do you think happens Sunday against the Raiders?
I think this is a winnable game for the Bears, but I'm not going to pick them. I'm going to take the Raiders. I think it's close, though. I think the Raiders win by a field goal, maybe 7 points. It's a tough the Bears pass rush should have a good day. I think that will be one area where they can take advantage. And I just have some questions about this Bears offense, when they're not playing teams like the Lions.
Kyle, what do you think?
Well, let's start on the Las Vegas side. I don't like this Raiders team all that much. I thought they overachieved last year. I have not liked what I've seen watching them play this year. I think it matches up well for the Bears. And I don't know. Maybe it's with my White Sox being in the playoffs finally. I'm just in a good mood. I'm being a bit of an optimist. I think the Bears are going to win this week, and I think the offense takes a step forward. And Bears fans on Monday morning will be a lot happier than they have been most of this season.
I hope you're right, Kyle. I will tell you guys that I think it's cleanup week, and that's good news for everybody because regardless of what happens Sunday, that's what we're going to be focused on going forward. I mean, at this point, we've eliminated the questions. They're not going back to Andy Dalton. We just have to hope that Justin Fields stays healthy. And he is going to have to be judged of his own merit starting this week, regardless of what kind of help he gets from the offensive line and anybody else. This is a defense that sets up nicely. Now, they can rush the passer. That's the one thing you do have to keep an eye on. Max Crosby, Yannick Ngakoue, and this has always been a problem for this defense. And those two are not giving them all that they need, although Max Crosby is pretty good. But other than that, they should be able to do some business against this Raiders defense. If you flip it around, the Raiders' offensive line is giving them as much or more trouble as the Bears' offensive line is giving their offense. And, one thing that we got through the whole podcast without mentioning, because everybody thought that this was the key to the dynamic 2018 Bears defense returning, Chicago Bears are number 1 in the NFL with 15 quarterback sacks, and they're still just figuring it out. This is going to continue to get better if Khalil Mack is healthy. And you know what, Kyle? If I knew that Khalil Mack was healthy as we talk here, I might even agree with you. I might say I smell the upset here because, these stories come out of nowhere. Fields gets the job. They go to Vegas. They upset people. Bears Nation gets excited. Hey, maybe we are a playoff team. Then they go lose 6 in a row. I'm with Sean on this one. I think that they're getting better. I think the offense is going to be better. The offense is clearly in better hands when you got laser calling plays. But you're going into a hostile environment. The Raiders are much better in that new stadium at home than they are on the road. And the rookie is going to make some mistakes at quarterback. And we just don't know if they're going to be good enough without Montgomery. And then here's the last piece. I think I'd be stunned if Khalil Mack didn't play. But as we talk Friday morning, he has not practiced all week. And we know he only took half the snaps last week. And it is now both bruised ribs and a bum foot. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm sure Akeem Hicks can't play. And it's nothing against Akeem. It's not because he's not tough enough or a big enough hero. Groin pulls for any football player are impossible to deal with. They take a long time to heal, and especially the big guys, the 320, 330, 340 guys. It's really tough. And the fact that just one play, it happened on the first play of the game last week and never even considered coming back off the sideline, tells you it was a fairly serious groin pull. So going in there without Akeem Hicks, with a wounded Khalil Mack, it takes some of the edge off what I think could be an advantage for the Bears. And then the last piece is, guys, we haven't talked about it. Jalen Johnson is forget waiting for it. He's becoming a star right now. He has played excellent football, so he can be the answer to a Henry Ruggs. They actually had him traveling last week, on the Lions' best receiver. So it's something that they will do on occasion with him. He's gotten that good. Eddie Jackson's playing quite a bit better. But if it gets softer up front without Hicks and with a wounded Khalil Mack, the Raiders are going to score points. That much we know. Derek Carr is going to throw for 300 yards. So I'm going to go a little stronger than Sean. He said 3, maybe 7. No, I think it's 3 or 4. I think the Bears will be in this game. That is relevant because while I don't bet, I know some people do, and I know the number is about 5.5. So I don't think it's a touchdown. I think the Bears will play them close, but I just can't pull the trigger on it. And maybe it's because I'm a Cubs fan instead of a Sox fan, Kyle. I don't know what else to say.
I'm just in too good of a mood to pick against the Bears this week, apparently.
Even after that game 1 loss, Kyle?
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and just brush past that.
Guys, listen. We don't do baseball here, but I will say this: those are 2 of the most impressive batting orders I've ever seen. I mean, I'm watching the Sox come up, and I know I've been following them all year, but even in the 8th, I thought, wow, they're not going to pull a 6-run comeback. But man, I mean, great at bats, and you see one guy after another come up who can win the game. Then I turn around and listen to the Astros lineup, and I realize what's going on there. So it's a tough putt, but we hope the Sox can turn it around game 2. By the time we talk again next week, you all will know what happened. So we'll be pulling for them as well. All eyes on Las Vegas on Sunday, though, guys, and we appreciate you joining us this morning. I am sorry for the up and down, rough and tumble start that I had and struggling through this. At least Molly didn't go, chugging a gallon of water, which she normally does every week to disrupt the broadcast. So my dog gets an A, I get an F. What are you going to do? One more reminder, people, shawlocal.com. We would love if you got it absolutely for free. That's not the reality of the media business media world anymore is what I'm trying to say. But you can't get it for much less than 99 cents a month. And if you do subscribe to shawlocal.com by midnight Friday night, October 8th, you can get your first 3 months for just $2.97, 99 cents a month. We encourage you to do it because this ain't the end. This is just the beginning. All the controversy we've talked about up until now with the Bears, their quarterback position, their coaching situation, their management, everything going on. Well, there's nothing left to change. Now they're going to be judged strictly on what they do on the football field, and nobody's going to break it down better for you than we do at Bears Insider. So please get to shawlocal.com. Also, don't forget to go to the App Store on your phone. You can go to iTunes. You can go to shawlocal.com, download a subscription to this podcast because we really enjoy visiting with you every week, and we look forward to doing it again next week. We'll be talking about Justin Fields, I'm sure. Whether it's a victory or a loss, that remains to be seen. Enjoy the game Sunday, everybody.